Welcome to Haunted Places Podcast, Episode 5. The Conjuring House. Reality Trumps Fiction. The Harrisville, Rhode Island house that is the source of the Conjuring horror movie and ensuing franchise was built in 1736 and historically is referred to as the Old Arnold Estate. Originally 200 acres, it now comprises of 8 acres of countryside 40 miles north of Providence, Rhode Island. Now, the Old Arnold Estate is, of course, no longer known as the Old Arnold Estate. It's known as the Conjuring House since the 2013 release of the movie of the same name. And despite its notorious reputation since the release of that and the rest of the films in the horror movie franchise, it certainly hasn't hurt its resale value. In fact, it's helped it. Now, while most million-dollar homes advertised around the country usually have a never-ending list of amenities to attract buyers, however, this estate, which changed hands recently in 2022, selling for an impressive $1.5 million, several $100,000 over the asking price, is simply a simple, nearly 3-century-old farmhouse. However, it was sold with the stipulation that the buyer, Boston real estate developer Jacqueline Nunez, not live in the house full-time, to which Nunez happily agreed to, and continues to allow the ghost tours that the previous owners, Jen and Corey Heinsohn, who have only owned the property since 2019, began. Now, of course, the Heinsohn family were quite familiar with the Conjuring films and knew exactly what they were getting into when they purchased the estate. They claimed they'd always been fascinated with the supernatural and said they knew the sordid history of their new home when they moved into it in the summer of 2019. So the couple weren't exactly surprised when strange things started happening around the house. Soon after moving in, the couple reported strange occurrences like doors opening and closing on their own, weird voices in the walls, random knocking, and also random unexplained problems with TVs, computers, and stereos. That is, like sudden static and distorted voices coming through, along with distorted images in the television or the computer screens. Though far from running screaming from their home, the Heinsohns instead thought they'd share the strange happenings with fans of the Conjuring movies and open the house to the public. And for horror movie buffs, the chance to set foot in a reportedly haunted house, especially one so famous, can be quite the experience. But even thrill seekers might find it a bit too much to bear. Boston Globe reporter Amanda Milkovitz had a sleepover with her sister at the house in October 2020, and she summed up the experience in one straightforward sentence: "I'm glad it was just one night." In 2019, the Discovery Channel hosted a 2-hour Halloween special as part of the Travel Channel's Ghosttober event. The lead paranormal investigator, Zach Baggins, later said that the house made him physically ill, and he only recovered from the experience 3 weeks later. Clearly, this is not a house for the faint of heart. When the first Conjuring film was released in 2013, it was met with critical acclaim, praised for its all-too-realistic portrayal of the demonic haunting of an innocent family. Of course, most viewers assumed that the movie was nothing but the wild imaginings of a Hollywood screenwriter. Far from it. The story of The Conjuring is actually rooted in the very real and horrifying experiences of Ed and Lorraine Warren. Ed Warren was a World War II veteran and former police officer who became a self-professed demonologist after studying the subject on his own. His wife, Lorraine, claimed to be a clairvoyant and medium who was capable of communicating with the demons that Ed discovered. In 1952, Ed and Lorraine founded the New England Society for Psychic Research, the oldest ghost hunting group in New England. They quickly gained notoriety as respected paranormal investigators. Their most famous case, though, is the one based on the Conjuring horror film that focuses on Ed and Lorraine's experiences in exorcising a demon or demons. The movie seems over-dramatized and impossible to believe. The Warrens maintain that all of the events depicted actually transpired. Though Ed died in 2006, Lorraine was a consultant on the film and claims that she didn't let the directors take any more dramatic license than was necessary. Nevertheless, the true story of The Conjuring remains almost unbelievably chilling to this day. In 1971, the Perron family moved into the rustic 14-room farmhouse. And just as with the Heinsohns, Carolyn, Roger, and their 5 daughters began to notice strange things happening almost immediately. But unlike the Heinsohns, their haunting evolved into something much more terrifying. It started small. Caroline would notice that the broom went missing or seemed to move from place to place on its own. She would hear the sound of something scraping against the kettle in the kitchen when no one was in there. She'd find small piles of dirt in the center of a newly cleaned kitchen floor. Caroline allegedly researched the history of the home and discovered that it had been in the same family for 8 generations, and that many of them had died under mysterious or horrible circumstances. Several of the children in the family had drowned in a nearby creek. One was murdered, and a few of them tragically hanged themselves in the attic. The spirit that is depicted in the film, Bathsheba, was the worst of them, according to their oldest daughter, Andrea. Whoever the spirit was, she perceived herself to be mistress of the house and resented the competition my mother posed for that position, said Andrea Perron later in an interview. And it turns out that the real person, Bathsheba Shervin, who lived on the Perrons' property in the mid-1800s, did have quite the reputation. She was rumored to have been a Satanist, and there was even evidence that she had been involved in the death of a neighbor's child. Apparently, she had been babysitting her neighbor's son when the young boy mysteriously died. Local doctors established that the child's skull had been impaled with a small, albeit fatal tool. Despite the fact that Sherman was the last to tend to the boy, the case never went to court. This understandably enraged local women. She was also rumored to have been a practicing witch and a distant relation to Mary Easty, who was hanged as a witch in the 1695 Salem witch trials. Now, as for the actual historical record, they confirmed that Bathsheba Thayer was born in 1812 and would later marry a farmer named Judson Sherman in Connecticut before birthing a boy named Herbert. The legend of Bathsheba, meanwhile, claims that she was later caught sacrificing her son to Satan with a sewing needle, cursing all who would dare live on her land. And in the fall of 1849, she supposedly climbed a tree and hanged herself. She was buried in a nearby Baptist cemetery in downtown Harrisville. Parents have always firmly believed that it was Bathsheba's spirit who was tormenting their girls. Again, according to their eldest, Andrea, the family experienced other spirits as well, and some that would smell like rotting flesh and would cause beds to rise off the floor. She claims her father would enter the basement and feel a cold, stinking presence behind him. They often stayed away from the dirt-floored cellar, but the heating equipment would often fail mysteriously, forcing the father to venture down into the cellar again. Over the 10 years that the family had lived in the house, the Warrens made multiple trips to investigate. At one point, Lorraine conducted a seance to attempt to contact the spirits were haunting the family. During the seance, Carolyn Perron, it's been told, became possessed, speaking in tongues and rising from the ground in her chair. "I thought I was going to pass out," Andrea later said. "My mother began to speak a language not of this world, in a voice not of her own. Her chair levitated, and she was thrown across the room." Though the movie version of events culminates with Ed performing an exorcism rather than a seance, Lorraine insists that she and her husband would never attempt one, as that must be performed by a Catholic priest. After the seance, Roger kicked the Warrens out. The seance had brought about mental instability in his wife. How he explained the levitation is anyone's guess. Anyways, according to Andrea, the family continued to live in the house to difficulties with their finances, or, not to put it mildly, but to their ability to make ends meet. And they did move out as soon as they were able to in 1980, at which point, apparently, the spirits were silenced and the hauntings ceased. That is, for the time being. And as noted, the house is apparently very much haunted to this day. Although, again, as noted, that doesn't stop droves of people trekking to the house to experience things for themselves. Well, let's hope they don't bite off more than they can chew. Well, that's going to do it for this episode of Haunted Places. Stay tuned tomorrow for more episodes running right through to Halloween. And until then, good night and sleep well.